Have you ever been told to stop daydreaming? To get your head out of the clouds? Well, today, we're going to talk about a boy whose daydreams didn't just stay in his head. They actually reached out and reshaped how we see the entire universe.
So let me ask you this. What if all those wild ideas and amazing stories floating around in your head actually had the power to change everything we know? Because for one quiet boy with a mind that loved to wander, that's pretty much exactly what happened. His daydreams weren't just a way to pass the time, they were his key to unlocking the secrets of the cosmos.
Now, we're talking about Albert Einstein, of course. But not the famous scientist with the crazy hair. Not yet. We're going all the way back to the beginning, when he was just a quiet little kid with a whole lot of questions. It all started when he was just 5 years old. His dad gave him a simple compass, and it completely blew his mind. He'd turn it, he'd shake it, he'd spin around in circles, but that little needle always snapped right back, pointing north. He just knew there had to be some invisible force out there, some secret power making it move, and he became obsessed with figuring it out.
But here's the crazy part. While Albert's mind was buzzing with these gigantic questions, his teachers, well, they just didn't get it. They saw a quiet boy whose mind was elsewhere, and they thought he was lazy or maybe just not very smart. His different way of thinking looked like a problem to them, not the superpower it really was. And because his brain just worked differently, school felt like a cage. He wasn't a troublemaker just for the sake of it. He was a rebel because his curiosity couldn't be contained.
Think about it. The schools back then were all about memorizing facts and following strict rules, no questions asked. But Albert's brain wasn't wired that way. It was built to ask why. It was built to imagine totally new ideas. And most of all, it was built to daydream. The very thing his teachers were trying to stop was actually his greatest gift.
So at just 16 years old, he'd had enough. He actually dropped out of his strict school so he could learn his own way. He spent his days just devouring books on physics and math, and whenever his brain got tired, he'd play his violin. He figured if the world wouldn't teach him the way he needed to learn, he'd just have to teach himself.
Now, after he finally finished his education, you'd think universities would be lining up to hire this guy, right? Nope, he couldn't get a teaching job anywhere, so he took what sounded like a really boring desk job. But secretly, that job gave him the one thing he needed most: time to think.
His job was to sit at a desk and review other people's inventions all day. But in those quiet moments, his mind would drift. He wasn't thinking about new kinds of toasters. He was thinking about the biggest things you can imagine: space, time, and the speed of light itself. For years, he just sat there and thought. He'd imagine what it would be like to ride on a beam of light, just chasing it through the universe. To the outside world, he was just a simple patent clerk. But inside his mind, a revolution was brewing. And then in 1905, everything exploded.
Scientists have a special name for 1905. They call it Einstein's Annus Mirabilis, which is Latin for miracle year, because this was the year that the quiet, daydreaming clerk published 4 papers that completely turned science upside down. And in one of those papers was the most famous equation in the history of the world.
There it is, E equals mc squared. It looks so simple, doesn't it? Just a few letters and a number, but that tiny little equation holds the secret to the power of the sun and the incredible energy locked inside every single atom. So what does it actually mean?
Well, it means that mass, the stuff that makes up everything, and energy aren't separate things. They're actually two sides of the same coin. This formula proved that even a tiny little piece of matter holds a mind-boggling amount of energy. Nobody had ever even dreamed the universe worked that way.
And that right there was Einstein's whole philosophy. He famously said that imagination is more important than knowledge. See, knowledge tells you what is, but imagination, well, that's what lets you ask, what if? His biggest ideas didn't come from just doing math in a lab. They came from his thought experiments, from the daydreams that started when he was just a kid.
After his miracle year, Einstein became world famous, but he never, ever lost that sense of wonder or his quirky personality. He was still that curious boy on the inside, just, with much wilder hair.
And people absolutely loved him for it. This was a genius who never combed his hair and couldn't stand wearing socks. He would get so lost in thought that he once forgot his own home address. He was even offered the chance to be the president of a country, but he turned it down, saying he wasn't very good with people. He was just this brilliant, curious, and totally unique human being.
But don't let the funny stories fool you.
Those daydreams have a huge impact on our lives right now. The GPS in your phone? That only works because of his theories about how space and time are connected. His work helped pave the way for space travel, and even the nuclear energy that can power our cities.
And what's so incredible, so amazing, is that all of it, the famous equations, the technology that shapes our modern world, it all goes back to one single moment. A 5-year-old boy just staring at a compass, completely filled with wonder about an invisible force that made a needle point north.
Albert Einstein's curiosity literally changed the world. So what about you? What are you curious about? What invisible forces do you want to understand? Because if his story teaches us anything, it's that your daydreams might just hold the next big idea.